Welcome to Secrets of Tomorrow's Leaders. I'm Corin Young at RK Studios. This podcast is produced in partnership with JCI Santa Clarita and is available on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes Podcast, Google Podcast, and Spotify. Our guest today is Paul Butler, one of the co-owners of Newleaf Training and Development. He's a staff training and leadership company headquartered in Valencia, California. Prior to starting Newleaf in 2006, he previously served in senior leadership positions with Hilton and Marriott hotels in Europe as well as in North America. Paul is a member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants and the Chartered Global Management Accountants. He married in 1994, and Paul and his wife Gaynor have two children, Brodie and Henry. He's doing a training for JCI Santa Clarita on June 29th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's on business financial intelligence, and it's all through Zoom from the comfort of your own home. Paul, that's a long introduction, but thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Oh, Corin, I'm delighted to be here today. And for those of you that I don't know, I'm originally from England, in case you think I have a speech impediment. If you've ever been to England, I'm specifically from Stratford-upon-Avon, where Shakespeare's from. Billy Shakes, as we used to call him as schoolboys, sounded rather rebellious at the time, not so much now. And a lot of people say to me, they find it hard to believe that I'm an accountant. They say, gosh, you got far too much personality to be an accountant.
You know, when I was reading that you were a member of these accounting companies, I didn't realize that you had an accounting background. I just assumed that you had some kind of, came from other management type positions. But
yeah.
What were you doing in accounting before you got into training and development?
Yeah, so I qualified with PricewaterhouseCoopers, or PwC as they're often referred to, in London. And then I worked for Hilton Hotels for quite a few years and went up the ranks with them and became a regional finance director. So I had about 60 of the hotels in Western Europe. And then they brought me over here, actually after 9/11, seems like a lifetime ago now. And I came over as the finance director for Hilton Honors, which is now actually the world's largest loyalty program. That was when Hilton's worldwide headquarters was based in Beverly Hills. And Hilton rented a home for us. And I can't remember how, but we just discovered Valencia. So we were here just for those 2 years. And then we went back to England in 2003. And then my wife and I said, gee, we don't say G in England, by the way. I'm just translating now because I'm completely bilingual. We said, gee, on the basis you've only got one life on this earth, why not be where you want to be, do what you want to be doing with who you want to be doing it with. And so we set ourselves a goal to just sell everything and move back to America. And so we moved back over here on an entrepreneur's visa, which was a really tough visa to get. And, as you mentioned in your kind introduction, we've been blessed with a tremendous start in business. So basically that's to answer your question about what I was doing before we started a training and development company.
Yeah, you would think that working for these different hotels that you'd have a chance to travel the world and see so many amazing places, and then working in Beverly Hills, and of all the places in the world, you chose Santa Clarita to move to.
Well, little fun fact, Corin, if you can picture the scene, my wife and I had this beautiful old cottage in the centre of England in Stratford-upon-Avon. It was built in 1612. And as I say, picture the scene, we were back in England in 2003 and we decided we wanted to get back to America. And we went down to our local village store and we bought a binder and we wrote on the binder the Get Back to Santa Clarita plan.
No way. All right. So you've been here 14 years as the co-owner of Newleaf Training and Development. How have things kind of grown and changed for you? Or, over the last 14 years, that's been a really changing time in this country and locally.
Yeah.
So how's that been for you?
Well, we're so grateful, Corey. When we started, as you heard, in 2006. And just as we started getting going in business, that thing called the Great Recession started.
That's right.
And even though we dropped about 30-40% in sales, which of course, wouldn't be surprising for a service like ours, which is not essential for businesses, but we managed to hold on and we did okay. And then just as we were kind of growing out of that, coming out of that recession, we started going out to, we were having dinner with different friends in the US, and they would say these two words that we'd never heard together. college funds. And we were like, what? College funds. And I was like, what? Because in England, it's completely different. Our public education is essentially free, even through the university levels.
Uh-huh.
And so my point being is we had to divert a lot of cash into the kids' college funds. They both graduated from local, fairly expensive private universities. So we weren't able to grow much more, through acquisition or anything like that. We just were diverting a lot of cash into the college funds. And then thankfully, both of the kids are off the payroll now. They both graduated last year. Our daughter from Azusa. Oh, thanks. Our daughter from Azusa Pacific. She's actually going to go on to med school next. And then our daughter from Chapman University down in Orange. She works for MGM Studios as a financial analyst. And my point being is that in the last 3 years, we actually launched a second office, and that's over in Florida. And hopefully what we'd love to be able to do, our plan is in 2022, we want to have a third office, and we're thinking probably somewhere in Texas. And then probably 4 or 5 years after that, we then want to open a fourth and final office, which we're thinking in Colorado, probably Denver. And then, potentially maybe 12, 15 years from now, sell the whole business.
My goodness. Okay. So with locations all over the place, do you actually have to travel when you do your training, or is it all online? Like, obviously these days are a little bit different, but
until obviously all the COVID situation, we were doing about 70% of our work in person, on site for clients. And so we've now served clients in 28 states, in China, India, 3 countries in Western Europe, in Australia. But what we've noticed in the last 3 or 4 months with the COVID situation is we've flipped from doing like 30% of our work online to now doing virtually 100% of it online. Although we are starting to see some bookings coming back now where they want us to do work on site.
Cool. One thing that I'm wondering, you said you've been training in 28 states and all kinds of different countries. Are there any consistencies that you notice with the organizations that hire you to do these trainings? Anything that they have in common, and what are the differences?
Yeah, well, it's not just companies, actually. I mean, about 50%, 50, of our client base are corporations. So it'd be inappropriate to call out names now, but they're all on our website. So these are large, usually publicly traded corporate organizations. Probably 30% of our clients are large educational establishments, and these could be private or public. And then the other 20% seems to be made up of government or quasi-government entities. I think some of the common things that we've seen in different parts of the world is just the vital importance of leadership. I look at leadership rather like parenting. I mean, my wife and I are not the perfect parents, but I think we're pretty good parents. And I think when you have a functional rather than a dysfunctional household, it really comes down to good parenting. And when I've seen workplaces that are functional, it's because they've got good leadership. And of course, when I see organizations that are dysfunctional, it's because you have poor leadership. So I'm no philosopher. Like I said, I'm a recovering accountant. But what I've noticed about human behavior is if you have bad leadership, you tend to get dysfunctional organizations, because it's really the human condition. So it doesn't matter whether we're talking about Santa Clarita or we're talking about Switzerland. There's something deep down within the kind of human engine that if we don't have good leadership, we tend to get messiness really between human beings.
You've done a few of these trainings for us, for JCI Santa Clarita. I've been happy to join in and learn from you. And you're doing one in a couple of weeks, and it's on business financial intelligence. What does that even mean, and why is that important?
It's actually a secret.
Oh, the secret. Well, that's why you're here, Paul.
I often think that business financial intelligence, I often refer to it as being a mindset, because it's really the way that we think as employees, but it's also a skill set. In other words, you have to actually do something that very few employees have, and all organizations need, because it doesn't matter whether you're a corporate entity or an educational entity or a government entity. Every single organization needs to make sure that its income is bigger than its expenses, that its assets are bigger than its liabilities, and it needs to make sure that it has sufficient cash flow And so with regard to this particular subject, business financial intelligence, I often say that employees can only make so much contribution based on their technical competence. If you're an engineer or an architect or a teacher, a call center worker, you can only make so much contribution based on your technical knowledge. But over and above that, you need to be really good at managing yourself. And if you're good at managing yourself, you might be given that kind of noble, honorable responsibility to lead others. But I'd like to say that the kind of icing on top of the cake is really business financial intelligence, because you can go to the highest high in an organization. You can actually traverse across departments. You can even go across the world when you've got a sharp business financial intelligence. Because one of the wonderful things about finance, Corin, and I did say the word wonderful and finance in the same sentence, is that really it's a universal language. All that changes is the accents and the spelling.
That's funny. As a small business owner myself, I've realized that the things that I'm good at are, doing the work. So I'm doing video production and, I could do that stuff. But like the businessy part of it, running a business is the stuff that's very scary and intimidating and tough for me. Things like coming up with estimates and invoicing and all that stuff.
They say that 9 out of 10 small businesses fail within the first 5 years. And if you actually double click on that and do the research as to why those small businesses fail, one of the top 5 reasons why 9 out of 10 small businesses fail within the first 5 years is not a lack of ideas. It's not a lack of technical competence. It's actually not a lack of managing yourself or a lack of being able to influence others. It's actually a lack of business acumen, sometimes called business financial intelligence. Most small business owners, of course, they can get, there might be a plumber working for another plumbing company. And then one day they decide, hey, you know what, I'll start up my own plumbing company. And then what happens is they become successful and they just become exhausted plumbers. Rather than actually, the old phrase is, you probably heard, is like working on the business rather than working in the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so part of this thing that we're going to be looking at on the 29th is really how do you run a business, which is business financial intelligence, rather than running in the business.
Okay.
So the difference.
That sounds, so that sounds pretty fascinating. I'll sign up. So it's July 29th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Business Financial Intelligence. Paul Butler from Newleaf Training and Development will be doing this for JCI Santa Clarita. I'm excited. Thank you so much for doing that and for joining us on this podcast today.
I'm looking forward very much to doing it, Corin. And thanks again for all the work that you do for the JCIs. And it's a real pleasure to work with the JCIs.
Yeah, likewise. We'll see you soon.
Cheers, Corin.